Another week on the Beacon Hill podcast. I'm here with Jake Edwards.
What's up?
How's it going, Jake?
It's going pretty good.
It's good, man. It's good to be with you.
Yeah.
We're going to jump right into it in just a moment, but by way of small talk today,
Yeah.
I was looking, if you didn't know, National Geographic Kids
Mm-hmm.
has a whole host of personality quizzes you can take
Okay.
to find out different things about yourself.
Yeah.
We're going to find out something about you today.
Okay. I love NGO.
I'm thinking we're going to find out which mythical creature you're most like.
Okay.
So it's got a series of 10 questions.
Like Spider-Man and like.
I don't know. I haven't seen what the result is. You might not like it, or you might like it. I don't know. But
Either way, I will live my life the
yeah.
rest of the time like that.
So there are 10 questions. All you have to do is answer 10 questions, and you're going to know which mythical creature you are.
Okay.
Joel, is there a certain you like dragons and things? Is there a certain mythical creature you think Jake would be before we take this test that you're like, this is Jake?
Jake is going to be a griffin.
I'm not even sure what that is.
You don't
What-
know what that is?
No.
That's
what is that?
the body of a lion, right?
Yeah, body of a lion,
Head of an eagle.
head of an eagle,
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to
massive
find
wings,
out. Okay, we're going to find out.
because he
That-
likes to fly.
That'd be dope.
All right. First question. Which word, now these are multiple choice.
Okay.
All right. Which word would you use to describe yourself?
Okay.
Strong, brave, creative, kind, funny. And I would say most describe yourself.
Funny.
Funny. Okay.
Not
Now,
everybody would say that.
I was going to say, we're not describing you. You're describing
Yeah.
yourself.
Nobody else would say that, but
So funny it is. All right. Oh. Now we're reversed. How would your friends describe you, it
Ooh.
says.
same.
So maybe we
answer.
should let Joel do this one. All right.
Yeah, Joel.
Okay. So you got to describe Jake. It says he's the class clown. He's super supportive. The good listener of the group. A tiny bit mischievous, which, by the way, it's a pet peeve if you say mischievous, because that's not how you say that word.
Right.
It's mischievous.
I say mischievation.
Do you know that, Joel? It's not mischievous.
You don't want to come to me for pronunciation.
Well, this is why I come to you. So this word is mischievous.
Yeah.
If
He
you
knows
didn't
what it
know.
means.
If you didn't know. So I love getting into this, though. And somehow when Joel's not even on here with me, he gets drug into it. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me redo. Class clown, super supportive, good listener, a tiny bit mischievous, or the group leader. Which one is he?
Are you sure I should answer? Isn't, the quiz based off of what the person thinks?
It says,
of
how would your
themselves?
friends describe you? So, I mean, if we want an honest answer,
We're
we
just
want a
getting it
friend.
right from the friend.
Yeah, not what he thinks his friends would say. Let's just hear what his friend would say.
Okay.
Do you need those again?
Just go with class clown.
Okay. Class clown
Sorry.
it is.
Sorry,
Like
Jake.
it or not, Jake.
That's
Sorry,
fine.
Jake.
But you said funny. He said class clown, so it kind of works
That's
out.
right. I'm right. Yeah, I'm right in there.
Okay.
I'm not supporting anyone.
What's your favorite type of story to read or watch?
Okay.
Fantasy, realistic fiction, historical fiction, comedy, or documentaries?
I would say realistic fiction.
Okay. There we go.
Is my
All right. Number 4, which magical setting would you most like to live in? A mystical forest, a foggy marsh, an enchanted lake, a faraway castle, or a dimly lit cave?
definitely castle for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why are you picking that one?
Well, I'm not a big outside guy. That's
Okay.
I played basketball, and there's probably good Wi-Fi at the castle.
That's true. That's true. I know they have it at White Castle.
Yeah.
So if you ever go there,
Whatever
you need a little
castle you
Wi-Fi.
got, that's
Yeah.
where I'm going.
Which magical power would you most like to have?
Okay.
Invisibility, control the weather, breathing underwater, super strength, or telekinesis. You move objects with your mind.
Probably that one.
Okay.
That would be sweet.
Yeah, that would be. All right. Pick a magical item.
No, can't do it.
All right. Now we're getting a little bit into the mythical stuff, but that's all right. A wand, a potion, an elixir, life elixir, it says. I guess it restores your health.
Mm-hmm.
Armor, or an enchanted harp. I don't know what that would do, but you're a music guy.
Let's go with that, just to go with
Not
it.
sure what that would do, but you're a musician.
I'd probably pick the wand
Yeah.
but I want to go with the harp because
Yeah.
that sounds.
What's an enchanted harp do? By the way, say that 5 times fast.
Isn't there like somebody who
Maybe
played
that's
the
what
harp
David
and it
did.
made people fall asleep or something?
I don't know, but maybe David had that enchanted harp for Saul, you know? I don't know. Do you know?
No, I don't know.
Well, we'll just say
I
look
think
it
it's
up.
a harp.
Cupid plays a harp, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that's.
I don't
it.
know. But maybe it's a harp, like when you play it, people are just like, man, you're really good at the harp.
Man, that's
When-
magical.
When you can't play the harp.
I
Like it just
create
makes you be able to play it.
right. I create
don't know.
magic moments.
All right. Favorite activity. Favorite activity.
Yeah.
Eating,
Yeah.
reading a good book.
Nope.
Writing in a journal. Playing video games, or hiking. Now remember, it has to be one of those. You can't come up with something else.
At this point in my life, probably eating.
Okay. At least you're honest. All right. Which animal would you choose as your sidekick?
Okay.
A dog, a cat, a horse, a goat, or a rabbit?
The goat.
All right. Why the goat? I figured you would be like a dog guy.
I can make a lot of goat jokes, like he's the goat,
Oh yeah.
and then I could. He could like eat everything, like test stuff for me, so I don't get poisoned or whatever.
Okay. It's like your cupbearer goat.
I just thought of that, but that sounds
Yeah.
like a good plan.
Okay. Now, this one gives no context.
Okay.
It just says pick one.
All right.
Fire, sky, sea, wind, earth. You just pick one.
Fire.
Okay. Why did you gravitate toward fire?
I don't know. It sounds the coolest.
All right.
Is that like a Captain Planet?
Oh yeah, where
Question.
they're like all the
Heart.
They have like the.
was Hart
rings.
one of them from Captain Planet?
Yeah.
Wasn't
don't
he
remember
the?
that.
He was like the little kid or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What kind of hero would you most want to be? This is the last question.
Okay.
Intelligent, magical, funny, kind, or I'd really rather be the villain.
Oh dang.
Yeah. Would you rather be the villain
No.
or an intelligent, magical, funny, or kind hero?
I think I'd like to be a kind hero.
Okay. You had picked funny on first one.
Yeah, but like being the hero, that's real stuff. You know what I mean? Can't be joking around when you're saving people.
Yeah. You're ready to know what you are.
Yeah.
This is great, man. You're a unicorn.
That's what I would have said.
You're a unicorn, man. It says, legend has it that if you found a unicorn, the creature would grant you a wish. You also try to do nice things for others, giving compliments to friends and helping out neighbors. So
There you go.
it says, it talks about like some kind of a mythical creature that people told tales about, eventually called a unicorn. Here's the thing, though. We should have known this about, wait, hang on. There's one more thing. Like make-believe unicorns and you, real-life rhinos typically have a gentle nature. So you have a gentle nature, man.
Okay. That's
But
pretty.
it's weird to me. I should have known. National Geographic, they tell us more about the animal than they do about you.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it gives me a lot of facts
It's
about.
educational.
Yeah. I thought we were going to learn more about you, but we now know.
Bottom line, I'm a horse with a spike in its head. And that's pretty
bottom
cool.
line is,
Pretty cool.
Joel has a blankie with your face on it. That's the bottom line that we know. How do you feel about that?
Born to
Joel?
be friends.
I mean, you from before you even knew Jake, you had a blanket with his face on it.
It's meant to be. Meant to be.
I love all of this. I think if you're still listening to this podcast, you are getting a blessing today.
So, be sure to, when you see Jake, so we can know that you listen to this podcast, be sure to be sure to tell him how much of a unicorn he reminds you of.
Yeah.
And that would be great. Well, that was fun, Jake.
That was fun.
About as fun as I thought it would be.
I mean, I'm having fun.
Just think about this. You would have never done or known that had we not spent these moments
I would
together.
have never associated myself with a unicorn. And
Yeah.
I wanted to my whole life, but I just didn't know.
Now you have permission. Joel, do you have anything to add to this?
The timestamp is 12 minutes. If you want to skip this part of the podcast, we'll go ahead and add that in the description for the convenience of our listeners.
I don't know how many episodes we've done, but at some point you got to like branch out and get to know each other a little more, you know? Like I never
not just
knew
straight information.
that your personality was like a unicorn.
I mean,
Like, so we did a leadership like quiz or whatever for kind of a serious one for staff development, just to kind of get to know our leadership traits and all that kind of stuff.
right.
Can't remember if that was last year or year before. I think it was last year. But anyway, it didn't say anything about a unicorn on there. I would have never known.
It didn't.
So now I know. And that helps me get to know you a little bit better, man.
I'm glad. I
Glad
really
to know
am.
you.
Off
Glad to know
camera,
you.
we'll have to do. You guys will have to take it too.
Okay, that sounds fun. We can Joel can post his results later. On Sunday, I don't have any pivot to this. Like I don't have any transition.
Let's just go hard.
Okay.
Just transition.
Yeah. So on Sunday, we talked about. We jumped into Luke 13 on Sunday, and I preached on being part of the kingdom of God. And really, we looked at two separate sections. Started in verse 18, we talked about advancing the kingdom. And then beginning in verse 22, we talked about what does it look like and what does it take to be a citizen of the kingdom. And one of the things that Jesus gets into here is a couple things. Well, let me first talk about the advancement of the kingdom. Really, he talks about a mustard seed growing into a tree. He also talks about a woman who took a bunch of flour and then put leaven in it, and it grows and rises and all of that. And he says similarly, God's kingdom is going to be that way. It's like starts as something small, grows into something big, and honestly much bigger than maybe some would ever expect it to do. And this was, I mentioned Sunday, kind of in a different light, or opposition in some ways to what the Jews thought the kingdom of God was going to be. They thought it was just going to come in full force right in the beginning, and Jesus says, no, it's actually going to grow into something big. And so in thinking about that, like I talked about Sunday, how a lot of times churches see this happen from that perspective as well. Like at this point, if you look at Christianity as a whole, you can see, okay, yeah, from the start of the few followers Jesus had and the persecution they faced and all of that stuff, how it continued to grow. And now throughout the last couple thousand years, it's been a massive, like unstoppable movement. But when you look at the individual, like local church perspective, you can kind of see this too. Like it doesn't just take off all at one time. Sometimes there's slow growth. Sometimes there's even seemingly decline. But while we see this stuff in the local church, we know that God's kingdom as a whole is always advancing. But sometimes because it's so slow, at least for our time here on earth, Sometimes it can be, I guess, disheartening when you share the gospel, and it seems like maybe you're kind of in this dry season as a church, like you're doing all this work and nobody's getting baptized, nobody seemingly is getting saved. Like it seems like the ground is just really hard as far as like the hearts around you and things like that. What can help us keep sharing the gospel and keep moving forward, even when we don't see immediate results? Like, how can this reminder for us be hopeful in that, to know, that God's kingdom is still doing what it's supposed to be doing in spite of maybe what we see immediately around us? What are your thoughts?
I think that can be a pretty difficult thing, because as people, we're just so expectant of quick results. Just if something's going to work, it's going to work right away. And that's just not how a lot of things work, especially things that are worth the time and effort. And so I think the main thing is just we got to remember a couple of things. That one, that what we are trying to share is like absolutely pivotal to other people's spiritual health. Like it's life and death. And if there's a message that we have that can save someone from death, if we really think about it, that's like we're going to try to share that message no matter how much rejection we may get or how slow it may seem, if we truly care about other people. And so we just have to keep that in the forefront of our mind, that what we're sharing is literally life for people that don't know Christ. And so when we remember that, that can help us. And then also we just have to trust that in that verse that says that, we plant the seeds and God gives the growth. Like it's not our job to worry about who is coming to know him and not. Our responsibility is to share, and God is going to do his work with it. And so, I know that for me, I've had a handful of people that I've shared the gospel with that you just feel like you give so much effort, and then eventually it's like they just kind of fall away, and you don't really see the fruit from it. But there have been several of those people who later have come to Christ because they, went to a different church later in life or whatever. And like, I'm a part of that story, even though it wasn't an immediate thing in my presence that happened. Like, God used me and used these other people in the story to save this person. And so we just have to look at the long term instead of seeing right in front of us.
Yeah, and that's an encouraging thing. And I think something else to remember, like a lot of people get down on themselves when they're afraid of getting rejected or whatever as far as the gospel message. And we're going to see this Sunday, and we've already seen other times in Luke, but we're going to see this Sunday, people rejected Jesus. And when he was the one proclaiming himself, they rejected him. And if people reject Jesus, they're going to reject us when we share Jesus. And in fact, he tells us that. He tells his followers, they hated me, so they're going to hate you. And that's just part of it. But we've got to stay persistent, because we know, if we share the gospel 1,000 times and one person comes to know the Lord, it's all worth it. I'll say if we share it 1,000 times and nobody comes to know the Lord, it's worth it, because ultimately we are obeying the Lord. And we share because we have that hope, but we share also out of obedience to him, because he tells us to. And we just, I think some places, like people live in certain places, and it might be a little bit easier to share the gospel in certain places than others, because maybe some people have never heard it, or some people are maybe looking for that hope a little bit more. One of the unique things about Somerset in this area is so many people have some kind of prior experience or prior knowledge to Christianity and Jesus. And so a lot of people have, even if they don't have right beliefs about it, I should say right knowledge about it, they make assumptions, and they think, well, it takes this to go to heaven, or, well, God's like this, and they make assumptions sometimes based on just things that they've heard or what little knowledge they have about the Bible. And I think part of the issue is like breaking through that and saying, no, that assumption or that thing you've been told is not actually in the Bible, or you're, and that's part of, I think, what makes it difficult sometimes. Like around here, people think, well, when I was a kid, I prayed a prayer, and I was saved. And I'm not saying like you can't get saved that's part of it. Like we confess Jesus as Lord of our lives and turn our lives over to Him. But some people think like it's just about saying certain words,
Right.
and nothing to do with your heart, or no change in your life whatsoever. And so, there are a lot of people who think they are good to go with God, when in actuality they're not. And we're going to get to that in just a second, because that was a big part of what Jesus was talking about here in this passage. But one of the things that he mentioned here, especially the place talking about the mustard seed that gets bigger and turns into a tree, he says the birds of the sky nested in its branches. And this birds of the sky nesting in the branches, a lot of times in that day, Israel would have seen themselves as the tree. It's like, okay, and there were a lot of illustrations of that through the prophecies, and that was kind of like a picture that God had used in the Old Testament to represent Israel. And you see Jesus cursing a fig tree to represent Israel and things like that. And so they would see themselves as that tree. But the birds coming in, those would have been the Gentiles, that God's kingdom is big enough, and his purpose is to include the Gentiles. And so in thinking about that, ultimately the Gentiles were the outsiders of that day. They were the people that the Jewish folks would have been like, no, God's not for you. He's just for us. We're his chosen people. But Jesus was revealing even here that the Gentiles are part of God's plan for his kingdom. And so in thinking about that, like we have to remember in a similar way, like sometimes we can get the attitude of like God is for quote unquote like church people. Like if you've been raised in church, if you know about God and have been around Christianity your whole life or whatever, you're part of the kingdom. Like you're part of the church people. And then if you haven't, sometimes it's easy for churches to look at people and say, well, they're outsiders. They're like, they're people that they're not necessarily like us or whatever. But we see here that Jesus welcomes outsiders in the kingdom. So there's one side of it that people have been leery about welcoming outsiders. And they're like, well, we got to keep the church pure, and we got to, make sure everything's exactly in a certain way. And you look at Corinthians and other places in the New Testament, and you see, okay, there is an important part of like the purity of the church and holy living and all that stuff. But at the same time, again, Jesus calls us to reach out to those who are broken and need him and all of that, because we were all like that ultimately. So that being said, there are other churches who swing the pendulum the other direction. And they're like, we're going to be so welcoming that we like just focus on like loving people. We focus on quote unquote like guest services, and we're going to have like the best greeting team. We're going to have the best amenities when you show up, the best building, the most comfortable seats. We're not going to like do anything to try to offend anybody. Like we're going to intentionally try not to offend people. And at the end of the day, it's almost like the mindset is almost like in business or something. Like if you can offer the best product or the best services or whatever, then you'll get the most customers, and that's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. The problem is when you look at the Bible, there's got to be this balance between being loving and welcoming and hospitable, but also standing for truth and saying what needs to be said. Because you look at what Jesus says here, and he says, make every effort to enter through the narrow door, because I tell you, many will try to enter and won't be able once the homeowner gets up and shuts the door. He says, then you'll stand outside and knock on the door saying, Lord, open up for us. And he'll answer you, I don't know you or where you're from. And then you'll say, we ate and drank in your presence and you taught in our streets. But he'll say, I tell you, I don't know you or where you're from. Get away from me, all you evil doers. But the problem is, like, those people are like, hey, we've been around your stuff. We've been around your teaching. And that's like the church people who've maybe been welcomed, but haven't actually received the Lord. So in thinking about all of that, like, how do we go about striking a balance between, okay, we want to be hospitable, we want to be welcoming, all of that, but we got to stand for biblical truth at the same time. How can we as a church, we as individuals remember that? Because this is true for the church. This is true for our friendships too. Like, you know, we have friends at work that we're like, hey, I don't want to push them away because they don't know the Lord. And so what does it look like to be caring and hospitable and compassionate, but also stand for truth? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's an important thing as a church. You know, here at Beacon Hill, one of our priorities is to remove obstacles from people coming to know Jesus. And so we've kind of defined those things as like the way you dress, all the kind of extra things that churches project onto people whenever they come in and say, you have to look like us in order to be here. And so I think those are good things and important things. It's a good thing to make people feel welcome. I think the main thing that we have to know is that if we truly love people, then we will tell them the truth. And so, you know, if you have a friend that, you know, if you avoid an awkward conversation with them just because it's going to be awkward, but it's helping them go down the wrong path, then are you really being a true friend to that person? And I think it's the same thing for people who come into the church who don't know Jesus. If we don't ever tell them and they continue to stay at our church because of the welcoming nature and all the stuff that we have, and they never hear the gospel, essentially we are helping them to go on a path to destruction. Like, we're leading them down that path. But if we truly love them, I believe that we can give them truth in a way that is not going to be harsh and not going to be judgmental, but to say like, hey, we were exactly where you were, and the only reason why we're where we are now is because of Christ, and you can have that same thing. And then just being okay with people, like we said, people are going to be offended by that message and possibly leave, but we're not doing our job that Jesus wants us to do if we're not telling people the truth.
Yeah. I remember when I was at my last church, we had this lady visit the church a time or two and bring, there's one, well, I guess the first time or two she came by herself. And she was talking about her daughter at home who had like special needs and things like that. And she was like, you know, I'm wanting to get my daughter into church. She has special needs. So I wasn't sure like how you all could accommodate that or if you could. So I was coming to kind of check it out. My partner's at home with my daughter, and basically, you know, we're all looking to get involved in church, but we didn't want to bring her until we knew like you all were able to do that. And I was like, yeah, you know, that's no problem. You know, we can make accommodations or whatever. And, you know, so I was working that out. So a week or two went by and she showed up, but her partner was a woman, and it was a homosexual relationship. And I didn't know that at the time. But that particular morning that they showed up together, I had already planned to preach a sermon on like biblical marriage. And, you know, I saw them sitting together in the back row. You know, I thought through my mind, like, this is the first time they came to church together. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, God, and that's part of the trust in the Lord and his timing and his plan. Like, for whatever reason, God had like orchestrated it where the first Sunday they showed up was going to be the Sunday that I preached this message. And, you know, just realizing that and trusting that I preached the message, just as I didn't change. I'll say this: I didn't change the message in any direction because they were there.
Right.
I didn't make it weaker, if you will. I didn't make it harsher. I just preached the message as I had planned to preach the message, and I felt like God would lead me to preach the message or whatever. And, you know, that they ended up not coming back to church after that. But in my thought, I was like, you know, whatever reason is part of God's plan, at least they've maybe heard the truth, or, you know, and I feel like there might be some places that's like, oh, we have this situation in our church, so we can't talk about this, or we have to be very careful about this because we don't want to offend them. We want them to get saved, and so we've got to be very careful about this. And I get, like, that's the right attitude to have as far as, like, we want people to be saved. We don't need to unnecessarily offend people. But when we, like, don't talk about parts of the Bible just because we're afraid of offending somebody, then we're not treating the Bible as we should. Now, on the flip side, I'll say if we're only talking about something like just to, like, get at somebody and that we have the wrong attitude about it,
Right.
that's a problem too. So I think the main thing is just our attitude about it. Because, like, I'll give you an example. Like, if you had an issue and I was like, hey, man, I need to talk to you about something, or if I had an issue and you had to talk to me about it, sometimes, like, those situations, you've got to come at it like with that subject. It's like, hey, I need to talk to you about this. But my attitude behind it is going to make all the difference. Your attitude talking to me behind it is, like, whether it's in love, or just, you know, trying to seem like you're better than me, you know, those kind of things. And so we've got to think about that, like, not just in terms of the church, but our friendships too. You know, probably many people have friends who, and maybe family members who maybe are involved in, let's say, homosexuality, or some, maybe even not that, but maybe some sort of, like, relationship that is heterosexual that is sinful, the way that they're living that out, or some other type of sin, maybe some severe anger issues or whatever, like, you know. And as Christians, I'll say sometimes churches tend to harp on one sin or over the other. But if we know somebody's got something going on, I think the main thing we've got to do is preach the gospel to them. But they have to also know, like, when I come to Jesus, that means that I've got to change certain parts of my life.
Right.
Like, if there is a blaring, is it blaring or glaring? Glaring sin, glaring sin. Huh?
Glaring.
Glaring. Okay, I'll go with glaring.
Could be
Joel
blaring.
says yes. I trust Joel. He knows.
It's
He's
really
the-
loud. It's blaring.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking. It could be either one, but
Could be
let's
either
go
one.
with glaring. All right. If there's a glaring sin in somebody's life, and I'm sharing the gospel with them, and I don't tell them that God's word says that when you come to Jesus, you need to change this part of your life, then I'm almost setting them up, like, to be blindsided. I'm not helping disciple them by any means. Jesus says to count the cost before we come to them, and I think come to him. And I think that's part of helping that person count the cost, is like,
Yeah.
do I want to give up this part of my life? Now, granted, there are sins in all of our lives that are maybe private, or things that, you know, we've got to work through, like, our whole lives. But as we're sharing the gospel, as much as we're able, I think it's important to kind of counsel with people and say up front, like, hey, Jesus wants but because that's what Jesus did. I mean, we'll see in Luke in just a few chapters, you have the rich young ruler who says, hey, what does it take to get eternal life? And he says, you know the commands, don't commit. You know, he goes on to tell him all this. And he says, I've kept all these from my youth. And Jesus says, you still lack one thing. Sell all you have, distribute it to the poor, and you'll have treasures in heaven. Jesus is calling out his sin of greed. And he says, you got to deal with this before you can come to me. And then you've got him walking away sad. But then in, like, the very next chapter, you've got the story of Zacchaeus, who also had greed. And you see him like giving away even more than he took from people. And so, you've got all these places in Scripture where Jesus does that. I think that's what we've got to do as a church. That's what we got to do as individuals. It's like love people, but also like be willing to tell them the truth, even if it's a little bit heavy. But do it in love. I don't know. Other thoughts?
You're basically setting them up for failure. Like, and I would argue, if they haven't come to know Jesus yet, and you are like basically like saying like, hey, you're going to be a Christian now, and you're not telling them that, or you're telling them the opposite, like it's okay whatever you're doing, then you're really kind of spreading a false gospel almost, and giving them assurance of heaven and salvation that maybe they don't have. Because there's a big difference between needing to have your act together and be cleaned up before coming to Jesus, because obviously that's not what happens. But being willing to look at your sin and say, hey, this is a glaring thing. If I'm going to follow Jesus, he's going to require me to give that up. Like, people need to know that so that they can make that decision.
Yeah, and I'll say clearly, like, we all know it's not a thing like after we come to Jesus, we never sin again.
Right.
But it's a mind shift, like it's a shift of thinking to realize how I'm living, what I'm doing is sinful. I need to give that up for the Lord. I need to change my thinking about that. And I need to go to war with that instead of just being okay living in that way. And that goes for any type of sin.
Mm-hmm.
And for Christians, we are called, even the smallest sin in our life, to rid ourselves of that. And that is an ongoing battle, ongoing pursuit every day. And that's one of the reasons we need church, we need accountability, we need help from one another to see those things in our lives. Sometimes we don't see it, or sometimes we grow numb to the conviction of the Spirit, and like we've quenched the Spirit in our lives where we're just like not listening to him. And sometimes we need that wake-up call from people to be like, whoa, I do need to change that. And so I know it's kind of a balance too. I'll just say this, like being patient, but also realizing the urgency behind it, because we see here comes a day that it's all said and done and you can't get back that time.
Yeah.
And we don't know if it's going to be tomorrow or not. But at the same time, if your relationship with that person is not to a place maybe that you are able to talk about things and them accept, you have to kind of like weigh that out and say, and pray about it and say, I'm going to trust the Holy Spirit's leading and speak up when I feel like is necessary. I want to talk about one more thing before we wrap up here. We looked at, like I mentioned, the urgency behind it and the finality behind when that door gets shut. If we genuinely believed as a church or as individuals that Jesus' warning is true, and I think we do believe that there's going to come a day for every person that, everything's going to be said and done, and that door is going to be closed. What priorities as individuals, what ministries and things as a church would we give greatest attention to and maybe care a little less about? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I know that like in the past couple of years, we've really looked at everything that we've done, and we try to have most of what we do, if not all of what we do, have some sort of gospel element to it. So like when we're, even when we're doing trunk or treat or these like more fun events as a church, like we're still either handing out material or we're inviting them to church to come hear the gospel and all those things. And so I think that, like, to me, it's a balance of, like, in my personal life or whatever, when I go to my daughter's basketball games, there's not necessarily like a blaring gospel element to that.
Is it blaring or glaring? I thought we settled on glaring.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
you're confusing me more now.
My bad. But there's still ways that I can live out the gospel in those situations. But I think I think if we're in the church and we're talking about ministry, then we need to prioritize things that are going to bring people closer to Jesus. And sometimes that's through hanging out with people, making connections and friendships and things like that, because that'll lead to that down the road. But we have to prioritize that gospel message and what we do.
Yeah, so that goes for us as a church. You know, if that's what we care about, I think our concern would be less about, like, you know, individual maybe preferences or comforts or whatever, and more about, like, what about the people who aren't here? What about the people we're not reaching? What about, you know, what are we doing to share the gospel? All those kind of things. We've got to remember that, and not just as a church, but as individuals through the week. So let me encourage you as you're thinking about your own life and what this looks like to live out first. And we'll talk about this a little bit more this Sunday, but remember, Jesus' warning here is for the people who are around him, like the people who seemingly are the religious people. And just to make sure for you in your life that you've actually given your heart and life to Jesus and are not just doing the church thing. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if every person who listened to this wasn't a believer. You know, there could be somebody listening today who needs to give their heart and life to Jesus. Let me encourage you to do that and to follow him. But then for all of us, as we kind of navigate what that looks like to share Jesus with people and prioritize that in our lives and think about telling them the truth versus, like, loving them, trying to find that middle ground of, like, you know, like doing both at the same time, telling them the truth out of love in a respectful, loving way as much as we're able, but remembering that Jesus is the one who ultimately sets the terms for coming into his kingdom. And so it's our job to share that with other people. And so maybe pray about who you can share with this week. Maybe pray about how, like, what are some ways that needs to change in your life, some things that you aren't doing that you need to be doing, some things maybe you have been doing, like attitudes, things you've been saying or whatever, that need to change as well. But anyway, if you're not connected to a church, by the way, we'd love to have you come to Beacon Hill. 9:15 grow groups on Sunday, 10:30 we have worship as well. For adults right now through the summer, we've got next week is the last week for our Wednesday night study this summer. And then here in a few weeks in August, we'll be kicking off everything on Wednesday night for kids and students and adults and everybody. So look forward to that. If you have any questions about the church, you can go to beaconhillbaptist.com. Lots of stuff on there. But anyway, we hope you have a great week. Remember to call Jake a unicorn if you see him on Sunday.
And I'll think of it as a huge compliment.
Yeah. So, yeah, have a great week, and we'll see you next time.